Good morning. Welcome to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Sunday, April the 12th, 2015. I want to talk about a topic that I've been thinking about the last couple of days. And it's something similar to the topic that I spoke about on Friday. But today I want to focus mainly on one specific player that's coming up in this year's draft. And then on another segment, I'll talk about the other player. Today, I want to focus on Marcus Mariota. I'm afraid for Marcus Mariota. And here's why I say this. See, when you hear or see a player failing in their particular sport, regardless of the sports, when you see a player fail, the media oftentimes don't get it correct as to why this particular player failed or why this particular player succeeded. Okay? A lot of times the media don't really get it correct. I'm going to explain to you why and we're not going to forget talking about success. I'm going to talk about why players fail, regardless of the sport, but particularly football. Because that's the sport we're particularly talking about, and that's the sport that Marcus Mariota plays. It's football. Here are 5 reasons why that I have as to why a player fails. But if you listen to the media, it's just basically 1 or 2 reasons. The media never really tells you the truth as to what's really going on. And the people who really know, if they try to come with the truth, a lot of times they get buried because the people have their agendas. But here are the reasons that I see why players fail in sports, but in the NFL, because that is what we're talking about. But these are the same reasons that apply to all sports. But we're specifically talking about the NFL. The first reason why a player may fail, folks, is injuries. Or a player failed to live up to the billing. Injuries. Now, 9 out of 10 times, you really cannot predict that a player you draft is going to have a healthy or productive career. A productive career without the injuries. What do I mean? Okay, let's say Tampa Bay does take Winston number 1. There's no guarantees that injuries will not derail his career. See, most of the times injuries cannot be predicted. That player is going to get injured. Now, sometimes players, like, let's take Sam Bradford, for example. Sam Bradford, who's now the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, he was drafted by the St. Louis Rams in 2010. Okay? And why this is important is because that was the last time that first-round picks got the big money. That's like $60 million guaranteed without even throwing a pass or catching a pass or whatever. Okay? But Sam Bradford was under the old CBA agreement. So he got drafted with the number 1 overall pick because of his quote-unquote franchise ability talent. Now, in Sam Bradford's case, folks, Sam Bradford was injured the last 2 years in college at Oklahoma, if you followed his career. And I said back then I would not draft Sam Bradford that high because of it. Because if a player cannot stay healthy in college, folks, what is the likelihood he's going to stay healthy at the pros? And true to form, after his rookie season, he hasn't really stayed healthy. Because why? For some reason, he's just injury prone. But he was injury prone in college. But a lot of times when you're drafting a player, number 1 or whatever position you're drafting, if they haven't been injured in high school or college, and they haven't, you don't know if that's going to stay the same in the pros. So a lot of times injuries can derail a player's career. And only sometimes can you somewhat predict it. But for the most part, you really cannot predict it. So that's one reason why a player may fail or never reach their potential. A second reason is laziness. A player gets to the pros and then they feel they've made it. They don't got to put in the work anymore. They don't got to put in the long hours. In other words, the long hours that they put in to get there, they stop doing it or they don't feel they got to put in even more hours. Folks, when you get to the pro level, whatever hours you might have put in, so let's say you put in 10 hours at your craft per day or per week or whatever, you got to put in almost double that at the next level. Because now you're not going up against, see, in college, folks, college can mask a lot of problems. Okay, because you might be the big fish in a little pond in college. Because you're going up against future doctors, lawyers, pediatricians, veterinarians, librarians. Okay? You're not going up against future stars or current professionals. Where in the pros, this guys get paid, folks. Everybody's getting paid. So everybody's a professional. So you got to work harder on your game. So sometimes laziness is the reason why a player fails. Okay? Here's the third reason why a player fails. Confidence. If you're going to be successful in any craft, but particularly an athlete, you got to be confident in your abilities. And when you lose confidence, folks, I don't care how talented you are, when you lose your confidence, you're going to lose your game. You're destined to fail. And a fourth reason, but just as equally as important as the other 2 to 3, wrong system. Which means, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about, where I mean wrong system. Remember a guy back in the mid-2000s by the name of Nnamdi Asomugha? A lot of people might not know who he is. He was a cornerback who played for the Raiders. Now, everybody talks about Revis Island, which was Darrelle Revis, who was named after Darrelle Revis and stuff. And Darrelle Revis is one of the top cornerbacks in the game, along with Richard Sherman and some others, Patrick Peterson and others. But there was a guy before them, or really during Darrelle Revis' early part of his career, by the name of Nnamdi Asomugha. Him and Revis was like neck and neck as to who's the best cornerback in the NFL. And then Nnamdi Asomugha made the mistake of, I believe it was in free agency, he chose to sign with Philadelphia. Okay? And the problem is this. Andy Reid put an offensive line coach as the defensive coordinator. And I want you to remember that. An offensive line coach is a defensive coordinator. Now, let me give you a little background on Nnamdi Asomugha. Nnamdi Asomugha was a shutdown cornerback, which means you put him on the other team's top wide receiver and he would basically nullify that receiver. Which means he's a man-to-man guy. He plays man-to-man. That's Nnamdi Asomugha's game. That's Darrelle Revis' game. Now, why am I mentioning about Nnamdi Asomugha? He goes to Philadelphia back in 2010 or so, and they talk about this dream team stuff. Oh, Nnamdi Asomugha, and they got Mike Vick, and they got this guy, and they got that guy. And what happened was, the defensive coordinator, or their philosophy in Philadelphia, was they didn't believe in the man-to-man. They wanted to play zone. Now, Nnamdi Asomugha never played zone in the NFL. And I seriously doubt he played zone in college. So now you're asking a man to go from man-to-man to playing zone. Nnamdi Asomugha did not perform well. He lost his confidence. And his game suffered because of it, because he lost his confidence, because he didn't know what it was he was doing. And what happened? Subsequently, he ended up burning up out of the league. Troy Polamalu is about to, he just retired. Now, what is interesting is I was watching the NFL Network the other day, yesterday, or really say Friday evening, and his ex-coach, Bill Cowler, was talking. And they says, the question was asked, when did you know he was going to be a Hall of Fame type player or this impactful type player that he became? And Bill Cowler said something interesting. He mentioned how in Polamalu's rookie season they had him doing many different things. And he was playing slow because he wasn't certain of what it was they were asking him to do. What does that mean was they had him playing out of position, cornerback. They had him doing different things. In other words, he was not doing what he does best. Okay? He's a safety. He goes after the ball. That's what he does. He'll chase after the quarterback. He does many different things, but all within the confines of his position. When you ask a guy to play a different position or you ask a guy to do different things than what he's accustomed to doing, he's not going to perform right. So that's called playing with the wrong system. Playing in the wrong system. And bad teams are notorious for doing this. Now, what does this all have to do with Marcus Mariota, you may ask? It has everything to do with Marcus Mariota, and this is why I am afraid for him. Because, you see, if you listen to what is being said in the media, to me it's this. They're setting him up for failure. And if Marcus Mariota is as smart as I think he is, he better not fall for it. Because why they keep mentioning about this whole pro style versus spread offense? Why do they keep mentioning that? Because what they want is they want Marcus Mariota, RG3, Colin Kaepernick, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, and all these boys to play like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, though Tom Brady plays in a spread offense, folks. Not really a pro-style offense. He plays a spread offense, but, oh no, you can't say that. But let's just assume differently. They want them to be like Peyton Manning and them boys. And they're not. They're not Drew Brees and Peyton Manning and Tom. They're not. They got athletic gifts. And when you take away those athletic gifts, folks, from them, they show their humanity. They're not as good as when they have the full complement of gifts. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about here. Remember a guy by the name of Vince Young? Now, see, if you listen to the media will tell you that Vince Young flamed out because of immaturity. They're not telling you the whole story, folks. Vince Young was ruined. Vince Young was set up to fail. Why was he set up to fail? When he was coming out in the draft, the 2005 draft, okay, he was hoping, the talk was he was going to go to Houston. That was the talk. Okay? When he came out after that sensational Rose Bowl game against USC, against Matt Leinart and USC, when they beat USC as the underdogs. USC was the favorites. Texas was the underdogs. A lot of people thought he would go to Houston, but once Houston settled on Mario Williams out of NC State, Vince Young went to Tennessee. Now, what a lot of people don't understand about this is there was a fight going on. See, and the media most of the media isn't going to tell you this. But Jeff Fisher never wanted Vince Young. And here's why. If you look at who was the offensive coordinator for Tennessee at that time, Norm Chow. Now, why is this important? Because Norm Chow was the former offensive coordinator at USC. Norm Chow worked with Matt Leinart. They wanted Matt Leinart. This is what Norm Chow and Jeff Fisher wanted. The owner, Bud Adams, wanted Vince Young. And this is where the fight came in. Okay? There was a fight. Not physical-wise, but just differences of opinions. And what Bud Adams should have did was one of two things. Either he should have allowed Fisher and them to get their way and get Matt Leinart, or he should have fired Jeff Fisher and brought in somebody who was going to be along with him. In other words, going with Vince Young. But by him not doing that, This is why, as much as I liked Bud Adams, he was also a failure as an owner in certain respects because he failed to do certain things that he should have done. He should have gotten rid of Fisher, or he should have acquiesced to Fisher. But it wasn't going to work. When you got two sides butting heads, folks, it creates divisions even within the players, in the locker room. It forces people to take sides. And divisions never work. It almost bars you from success. So, and I'm going to explain to you in other cases to prove my point. So, what happened was Vince Young was unfortunately caught in the middle of a power struggle between an owner and a head coach and the offensive coordinator. The owner and the head coach and the offensive coordinator versus, it was the offensive coordinator and the head coach versus the owner. Okay, don't listen to what Fisher and I'm telling you. They did not want this man. So what happened was Vince Young came in there and they had Kerry Collins. So what happened was Fisher wanted to go with Kerry Collins. The owner said, no, you're going to play Vince Young. Vince Young subsequently won Rookie of the Year that year. Now, I want to ask you guys a question. Who wins Rookie of the Year and cannot play in this league or in any league? Anytime you win Rookie of the Year, that's the MVP for rookies because rookies don't win MVPs. So that's why they have a rookie MVP called Rookie of the Year. That's the MVP for rookies, folks. So in the NFL, when you win MVP, or Rookie of the Year, when you win Rookie of the Year in the NFL, that's the same as saying you're the Peyton Mannings or Tom Brady's of the rookies. You're the best of the rookies. Because that makes, and I'm talking about if a quarterback wins it. Okay? But in other words, you're the best of the best at rookies when you win Rookie of the Year. Now, they have an offensive rookie of the year and a defensive rookie of the year, but still, nonetheless, it's still an MVP. It's an award. So what that means is you're a star, folks, because non-stars don't win Rookies of the Years or don't win MVPs. Non-stars don't do that. Only stars do that. So that means you're a star. That means you can play. You can ball, as they say in the street vernacular. You can ball. You got game. Vince Young had that. But Vince Young was seeing the struggle. He was seeing that Jeff Fisher didn't want him. So what happened was Jeff Fisher set the balls in motion to try to prove a point and to cause Vince Young to fail. He took away what Vince Young does well, which is use his legs and say, you got to stay in the pocket. And what happened was that following season, early in the season, Vince Young was struggling. So what happened was Vince Young mentally broke down. And he broke down during the game against Jacksonville, where he basically quit. Because why? He now wasn't playing the game that he loved playing because they're asking him to do something he wasn't equipped to do. He's not equipped to stand in no pocket and go through progressions. That's not what he did in college. That's not what he did in high school. That's not what he did in junior high, pee-wee, all those levels of football. Now you get to the pros and you're asking him to do something different. And then they sit there and say, why is he losing confidence? Because you're asking him to do something he never did before. And so he mentally broke down. He lost his confidence. They had him in the wrong system. But Jeff Fisher did that purposely. So he would look, so that the owner would look bad. That was done purposefully, folks. It was done to where it was so bad that a year or so later, they was playing a game in New England. And you'll never forget this because Tennessee was so bad in the game that if you was watching the NFL Network, you had Michael Irvin on there, you had Deion Sanders on there with Rich Eisen and them. And Deion was talking, and he kept watching Michael Irvin because Michael Irvin was like rubbing his eyes. He was doing things with his glasses. And so Deion looks over and Michael said, Michael, are you okay? Michael said, yeah, it's just I think I'm seeing a typo. So Dion's like, well, what are you talking about? He says, well, I'm looking at the stats of the New England Tennessee game there. And in the first half, because the game was at halftime at this point, and Kerry Collins had he was 4 for 11 for minus 15, minus 20 yards or something like that. The stats was just ridiculous, but in the negative. And folks, no defense is good enough to make you have negative passing yards. Okay? You can be the steel curtain, and at least you're going to get a yard or two of a positive passing yards. So if you got negative passing yards, that means this team is not performing. They're quitting. Okay? Now, why am I mentioning this? It's because with Kerry Collins and Vince Young enough. Because Jeff Fisher refused to play Vince Young to where the players quit on Jeff Fisher. You had, Tom Brady, did one of those usual play fakes, and, where they did, no, not play fakes, I'm sorry, with a flea flicker where they gave the ball to the running back runs to the line, turns around and gives the ball back to the quarterback, and then they throw it deep. New England did one of those. You had guys on Tennessee running backwards. Okay? Now, listen, we get it with flea flickers and trick plays, but it wasn't that good. Where they had a player running back. In other words, it was so embarrassing that Bud Adams put out an edict to Jeff Fisher. This better never happen again. Because everybody saw that Tennessee quit that day. So they were 1-6 at that point. Hold on, I'll be right back. Excuse me. Welcome back to Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. I'm sorry, I had to step away for a second because the lights had turned off, so I had to turn them back on. Anyway, so Bud Adams sent out an edict to Jeff Fisher saying that team better never perform that way again. And see, when you got to threaten the head coach, why is he the head coach of your team? So the team was 1-6 at that point. Okay? They were 1-6. Or 0-6. I'm sorry, they were 0-6. At that point, they didn't even win a game, folks. They didn't even win a game at that point. 0-6. And then Jeff Fisher reluctantly said, well, because Jeff Fisher saw the writing on the wall, that's why the players quit. So he went on ahead and reluctantly put in Vince Young, and Vince Young and the team. Now, all of a sudden, a team that couldn't play a week early against New England, all of a sudden looks a whole lot better the rest of the season. Now, they ultimately didn't make the playoffs because of the horrendous start they got off to. Excuse me, I think they ended up 8-8 at the end of the season. That's what I think happened. They ended up 8-8. But the question is, what could have been if they would have played Vince Young from the beginning? Okay, and then and even after all of that, Fisher says, "I refuse to name Vince Young as the starter for next year." Now you see right there, Bud Adams was supposed to come out there and says, "You're fired. You're fired." But Bud Adams didn't do that, folks. And then you had the blow up of all blow ups there, and then the rest is unfortunately history. But this happened because the owner refused to step in once he saw a toxic situation. He refused, and he created the toxic situation because he didn't allow Fisher to do his job. He should have allowed Fisher. Here's what I would have did if I was Bud Adams. Let's say I want Vince Young. Let's just say I'm the owner and I want Vince Young. And you're Jeff Fisher. And you're telling me you want Matt Leinart. All right, well, you're the coach, so you have to coach him. I'll tell you what. All right, you want Matt Leinart? No problem. You know what? Okay. But here's the thing. It better work. You better be right. As long as you're right, we're cool. Go ahead and draft Matt Leinart. Because the minute Matt Leinart fails, if he fails, I'm firing you. It's that simple. You better be right. Now, why? So now you would say, well, why would Jeff Fisher do something like this? It's real simple, folks. Egos. Egos get involved. Jeff Fisher's been there a long time, so egos get involved. And everybody was making Jeff Fisher to be out like if he was God himself. Like, Fisher can do no wrong. What a great coach he is. And you look at his record, he wasn't really that great of a coach, folks. He's at best okay. He's not that great of a coach. But the point I'm making is they ruined Vince Young. Now, let's spend a couple of years later, and there's this guy who this team went and gave up a boatload of picks to. By the name of, let me see, what was the name of this team? Oh, yes, the Washington Redskins. Or as I like to call them, the Deadskins. Not to make fun of the name, the team, or the culture or anything like that. But why do I have little regards for them? Because, see, folks, bad teams, there's a reason why there are teams that constantly are at the top. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, New England, Indianapolis, okay, Denver. These are good teams. They're constantly at the top for a reason. The Giants, they're constantly at the top for a reason. They're not teams that are constantly in the bottom. Tennessee, Washington. Unfortunately, my New York Jets. Okay? There are reasons why there are teams constantly at the bottom. Because teams that are constantly at the bottom do dumb things. That makes no sense. Tampa Bay. That makes no sense. You do things where it's like, huh? Why are you doing this? Now, why am I mentioning about Washington Redskins? Because they went and gave up a boatload of picks for RG3, which was the owner's call again. See why I have a problem with owners getting involved in these decision makings? And then what happens is, okay, he has this great season, rookie season, where he wins Rookie of the Year. Oh, Vince Young won Rookie of the Year in 2006. RG3 wins Rookie of the Year in 2012. You see the similarities. They both have the same game, read option. That is what they did in college, folks. Read option. Now, RG3 tears up his knee his rookie season. And RG3 was never the same. Now, injuries is part of it because RG3 can't stay on the field. But part of it is also, now they're asking him to be like Peyton Manning. In other words, stand in the pocket and boom, boom, boom. Decipher defenses by picking them apart in the pocket. Because they went and they hired a coach, Jay Gruden. Now, I want you to think of something with Jay Gruden. This is the same coach who was the offensive coordinator there in Cincinnati. And he was actually about to get fired. Because anytime an owner comes out and tells you, I didn't want this particular player, I wanted another player, but it was this coach who told me, who forced this player on me, that means that he's about to fire you. What am I talking about? Well, in the 2011 draft, okay, you had Cam Newton, who was drafted number 1, Andy Dalton, who was drafted in the second round, but there was a debate as to whether to go with Andy Dalton or Colin Kaepernick. And Jay Gruden, who was the offensive coordinator with Cincinnati, did not want Colin Kaepernick. He wanted Andy Dalton. So the owner said, I want Colin Kaepernick, because obviously if the owner is saying, I want Colin Kaepernick, it's because the scouts is telling him this. Just like in Tennessee. Do you think Bud Adams... Now, Bud Adams did want Vince Young because he was the hometown kid, because Bud Adams was down in Houston and all that stuff. But also, the scouts were saying Vince Young. But let's put that to the side for a second. So, Andy Dalton was picked, and then the next pick was San Francisco, and they went on ahead and picked Colin Kaepernick. And here's the funny thing. Colin Kaepernick has had success in the postseason, while Andy Dalton can't win a postseason game. So Mr. Brown, the owner, came out after last season, not this past season, but the season before last, and he said, I wanted Colin Kaepernick. But it was Jay Gruden who talked me against it. Okay? And you know Jay Gruden did it, so did the head coach, Marvin Lewis. Okay? You know that they were synchronized. So anyway, Because what was Jay Gruden's reasoning? Well, we were about to get rid of Carson Palmer, and I didn't have time to teach the pocket passing capabilities to Colin Kaepernick because we needed someone who could play right away. Because why? He says, and listen to what Jay Gruden said here, folks. I was not familiar with that read option or spread offense. That I was not familiar with that offense. Okay? Which means he's telling you he not only was not familiar with it, he wasn't willing to learn it, and he didn't want to deal with it. That's what he's telling you. That was Jay Gruden's reasoning for picking Andy Dalton over Colin Kaepernick. And as we've already seen, that was the wrong move. But let's get back to Washington. So after all of that, what did the owner of the Redskins, or what did the management of the Redskins do? Remember when I said the reason why teams constantly stay at the bottom? Because you got bad teams. It's not the teams is bad, it's management is bad. The ownership. It starts from the top, folks, and it works its way down. What did they went and did? They went and hired Jay Gruden because Jay Gruden said he could fix RG3. Now, why would you hire a man who says he could fix someone when he had, by his own admission, says he didn't like that style? That's why he chose the other guy. He told you that. So I'm not blaming Jay Gruden. I'm blaming Dan Snyder. Okay? Bruce Allen. I'm blaming them. You're the decision makers. You should have known. You don't hire Jay Gruden. Jay Gruden doesn't fit what RG3 does. You don't hire Jay Gruden. What did they want to do? Hire Jay Gruden when they knew that the owner there in Cincinnati was about to fire him. Jay Gruden was, I'm sorry. Well, you thought he's going to end up like his brother? No. And his brother was a failure. Not, that's not the right term. I wouldn't say he was a failure as a head coach. He wasn't a failure as a head coach. Bad talent evaluated, yes, but not a failure as a head coach. Because he did win a ring, and he did have a couple of successful seasons. But he was overhyped. Let's put it that way. So anyway, so Jay Gruden comes to the Redskins, and he doesn't want this read option stuff, which is what RG3 is best at. Now, in fairness to the Redskins, RG3 said he wanted to learn to play from the pocket, too. He wanted to be a pocket. See, you don't listen to the player. The player don't know what the hell he's talking about. You listen. You've been playing this way since you were peewee, since you were 6 to 8 years old. Now you're going to try to learn a new offense? This is not the time, folks, to learn a new offense. Okay? So, you went, and now they're installing this new offense, and they're asking him now to stay in the pocket. You're taking away RG3's greatest asset, his legs. Folks, you took that away from him. His legs. Okay? And what happened was RG3 struggled. And what happened was RG3 lost confidence. RG3 looked like a shell of himself. RG3 looked bad. Notice he was following the same career path that Vince Young had. Wrong system, folks. Why do you think Art Briles came out on First Take a couple of months ago and basically called the Redskins idiots? Not basically, he did say they're idiots. And he did something that in coaching fraternity they never do, which is openly criticize another head coach. Openly. Now, they may send some veiled shots, but they never openly just say, you're an idiot. But that's basically what Art Briles did. He says, listen, RG3's greatest strength is his legs, and you're taking it away from him. You don't force the player into your system. You force the system into your player. Like, in other words, you adapt your system to the talent you have. That's what good coaches do. Bad coaches try to force the player onto their system instead of saying, let me adapt my system to what it is you can do. Good coaches do that, folks. So RG3 is on the same path that Vince Young is on. Now let's look at the smart teams. Seattle, Carolina. Why am I mentioning these two teams? They both got quarterbacks who are talented, just like Washington, just like Vince Young was. Here's the difference. They smartly said, what is it you do best? Well, then let's have you do that. They're not asking Russell Wilson to stand in the pocket and read defenses the traditional way, go through progressions. That's not what Russell Wilson does, folks. That's not what he do. Russell Wilson, and you're hearing it here first, as a pocket quarterback, strictly from the pocket, he's at best average. He's at best average. He's not great from the pocket, folks. He doesn't have the strongest arm. But he's at best average. He's accurate, but he's average. He's average. But when you allow him now to use his athleticism, that's when he goes from being average to great. Because now you got to defend both the run and the pass. You can't just sit on one or the other. And everybody who wants to say, oh no, it's all about beast mode. Beast mode is a big reason why they're winning, they're doing what they're doing. But make no mistake about it. Beast mode was there before Russell Wilson, and they were still at best. And they still had an excellent defense, and they were still at best an 8-8 squad. At best. At best, they were still an 8-8 squad. Now you put in a Russell Wilson, and all of a sudden you're a championship caliber squad, folks. That's not a coincidence. But the fact is, they're allowing Russell Wilson to do what Russell Wilson is doing better. They're not telling Russell Wilson you got to stay in the pocket. They're not telling Russell Wilson that. Let's look at Cam Newton. In 2011, folks, Cam Newton came out. You have all these prognosticators, draft gurus, draft experts, Mel Kiper, Chris Mortensen, Mike Mayock, Todd McShay, all these boys, right? You had Todd McShay, who basically called Cam Newton dumb. Without coming out and using the word dumb, he basically was implying that Cam Newton was dumb. Okay? A lot of people was applying that. Oh, Carolina would be stupid for drafting Cam Newton #1 overall. And what the hell what is Carolina thinking? You should go with Blaine Gabbert. Blaine Gabbert was actually the rave, folks, back then. Blaine Gabbert was the main talked about player. Oh, you should go get Blaine Gabbert. This is a star in the making. Because he plays the traditional way. Okay? Blaine Gabbert didn't have the talent that say, Jameis Winston or other traditional type quarterbacks have. He didn't have that type of talent. But, in Missouri, he was accurate. But Cam Newton was a star. So what did Carolina smartly do? Because in the preseason, Cam Newton looked bad. Because why? They tried to get him to read the defenses by staying in the pocket and going through progressions. Cam Newton just couldn't perform. So they said, you know what? Let's get Cam Newton to just run the read option and do that, and let's see what he can do there. And Cam Newton became a star. Which shows you don't have to stay in the pocket to be a star as a quarterback. That's one of the biggest lies that the media tells you, is that you got to stay in the pocket. Roger the Dodger, folks, why he was called the Dodger. He didn't stay in the pocket. Steve Young didn't stay in the pocket. Randall Cunningham, these are stars. They didn't stay in the pocket. To a lesser extent, Mike Vick didn't stay in the pocket. Vick never stayed in the pocket. Okay? Here's another guy for you, John Elway. He didn't stay in no pocket. They made their own pockets. They didn't stay in no pocket. Brett Favre didn't stay in, and I call him Favre. I like calling him Favre, even though his name is Favre, but I like calling him Favre. Brett Favre never stayed in no, he didn't stay in no pocket. Matter of fact, Brett Favre was the most unorthodox quarterback you would ever see. As a matter of fact, anything you would say as a quarterback you shouldn't do, he did. Okay? But that's another story for another day. These guys weren't no traditional pocket quarterbacks. The media is telling you a lie if they tell you that they were. No. And especially back in the 70s, 80s, you couldn't get no just strictly pocket quarterback. Most quarterbacks were running for their lives. Okay? But that's neither here nor there. But the point that I'm making is that theory that you got to stay in the pocket. That theory is a bunch of hogwash, folks. So you're taking away what these guys do best. So then now, this brings me back to Colin Kaepernick. Oh, I'm sorry. So I want to finish up my point on Cam Newton. So when they allowed Cam Newton to just continue doing that read option and didn't have him be a strict in other words, a strict pocket passer, Cam Newton thrived. When Cam Newton would have flamed out, folks, if they would have just simply said, you got to stay in the pocket, he would have lost his confidence. And then the one thing he can do well, he wouldn't be able to do that well. Because he would lose his confidence. And guess what Carolina would be doing today? Looking for a new quarterback. But you don't need a quarterback because you got one. Because why? You're allowing him to do what he does best, and you're not messing with his game. Now this brings me to Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick was on the way, folks. This guy was cutting up Green Bay in Lambeau Field. This guy was getting the Super Bowls. He was a throw away from winning a Super Bowl. He was a throw away from getting back to the Super Bowl the following year. He was a throw away, folks. This guy was cutting the rug, as they say. And then last year, because of a fight between the head coach and management, the GM and the owner, they destroyed that team. Because the word was they wanted Jim Harbaugh, the head coach, out of there, for whatever the reason may be. Because he had no class. That's what you keep hearing. So anyway, Jim Harbaugh just stopped caring. So you had this offensive coordinator. Oh, excuse me. Oh. By the name of Greg Roman. Greg Roman, and I don't know if this edict came from management, but all of a sudden they wanted Kaepernick not to run as much. So Greg Roman devised a game plan to basically have Colin Kaepernick be a pocket quarterback. Stay in the pocket, as they mean when I refer to pocket quarterbacks. Staying in the pocket. Colin Kaepernick struggled mightily, folks. He struggled. It got so bad to where players on the team turned on management and turned on the offensive coordinator, saying, you screwed us up. You screwed us up. You changed Colin Kaepernick. You changed the offense. You stopped doing what got us to where we were at. So now it was the team versus management. Why do you think Greg Roman couldn't stay there after they got rid of because the players said, we don't want nothing to do with Greg Roman. We want nothing to do with that man because they know what went down there. So but what happened was Colin Kaepernick after the season, because Colin Kaepernick failed last season. He really didn't do well last season. So then now he goes to Kurt Warner to learn. And I said back then, when I heard about it, that's a mistake. And I love Kurt Warner. The issue is not Kurt Warner, per se. Here's the issue I have. Colin Kaepernick has got athletic abilities that Kurt Warner never had. Kurt Warner had to stay in the pocket, folks. Kurt Warner wasn't athletic. Kurt Warner wasn't an athlete, per se. He couldn't run, so Kurt Warner can only make his living by staying in the pocket. So he's teaching Colin Kaepernick how to stay in the pocket. And he came out with a statement saying, Colin Kaepernick, you got to stay in the pocket. That would be a mistake for Colin Kaepernick to do that. You played a certain way that got you to this point. Why will you radically change? That's a mistake. See, and even it got to a point where even Anquan Boldin, a future Hall of Famer himself, said, Colin Kaepernick, don't listen to the people. What he's trying to say is don't listen to Kurt Warner. What got you, go back to being you. Because you can't ask a guy when he gets to the pros to all of a sudden change his game. But that's what you're asking him to do. You're setting him up for failure. So I am skeptical to how long this is going to work this way. Because I'm interested to see how Colin Kaepernick performs. Oh, he may perform a little better in the pocket, but will he still be that same dynamic quarterback? Because, you see, what he gave defenses headaches with is the ability to run. If he doesn't run, I'm sorry, I don't think he's going to be a great pocket passer. He may be at best average, good at it at best, but he's not going to be great at that. So I am skeptical if he can pull this off. I would have preferred if he would have studied with if he would have studied with a former 49er great, Steve Young. Steve Young was athletic like Kaepernick. So who knows Kaepernick better than Steve Young? Steve Young could have showed him how he could make a living doing both. That would have been a better way for him to go. He could have went to Randall Cunningham. Cunningham went from evolving into being from a runner, a quarterback who can run, to a quarterback who more or less stood in the pocket late in his career, but still had an ability to run. He could have went to Donovan McNabb. He could have went to a number of guys. But he went to a guy who could not run. This is why I question why Colin Kaepernick did that. Now, everything I just said for the last 40 minutes or so brings me back to now Marcus Mariota, and why I am afraid for him. Because if he goes to the wrong team, in college, you can choose which team you want to go to, which offense you want to play in. You have to notice that's why he chose Oregon, that fast-paced read option, pistol, all that other stuff, where they're looking at the sideline and they're showing the cards, and okay, we're doing all this, that, and the other, okay. Where he could have chosen a much more conservative offense like Florida State, Stanford, and that all this stuff. But nonetheless, when you get drafted, you don't have the choice of what team you want to go to. Who drafts you, that's the team you're going to. Unless you're going to sit out and stuff, which he's not going to do that. So if you go to a team where there's fighting within management and coaching staff about whether to get you, it's not going to work. If he's going to a team where you got a coach who's clueless at how to utilize you, it's not going to work. Who's going to say, oh no, you got to do it this way, it's not going to work. He needs to go to a team that's going to embrace his talent. A team like Philadelphia that will embrace his talent and not ask him to do something he's never done before. That's how you're going to get the best chance of being successful with Mariota. This is why I'm saying I'm fearful of the team he goes to, because the team he goes to, you got a coach that's rigid, you're going to have problems. And then they're going to sit there, if Mariota fails, they're going to say, oh, Mariota didn't work hard enough, or Mariota was, see, this is why you got to be the pro-style. Stop. It's not the pro-style offense, folks, that matters. It's having a player do what he does best that matters. This is how you can maximize that player, or give that player the best chance of being successful. Have him do what he do best, and don't ask him to do something different than what he does best at. That's how you get a person to maximize their potential. I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Have a good day.